Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing the brand new summon showcase that starts tomorrow in Dragalia Lost for Fire Emblem characters. On this showcase, we're going to have Chrom as well as Peony, who's an original character from Book 4 of Fire Emblem Heroes, join Dragalia Lost. So this is your chance to summon these characters. It is a limited time banner, and it will be followed up by a second banner that features young Tiki. This has all been previewed in a really hype trailer for the Kindred Ties event. This is a brand new collaboration event. It's not the rerun that is currently happening, but something entirely different. That is also going to be starting tomorrow. I'll link to the trailer in the description below because I think it's well worth watching yourself. It's pretty exciting, and I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't already seen it. So Young Tiki is coming in part 2. Do keep that in mind. You don't have to summon immediately, even if you are interested in either Chrom or Peony. You could always wait until we get a proper preview of Young Tiki, see what she's all about, and then make a decision about where you want to spend your resources. And those two banners will overlap, so it's not like you have to decide before Young Tiki is even available. First, let's take a look at the Kindred Ties preview. And there's not much in the text description, but there is a link to the trailer in-game. And like I said, I'll post one in the description in case you want to see it yourself. But yeah, this event, from what we've seen so far and what I've already talked about, is pretty cool. There's going to be co-op defensive battles, which wasn't in the rerun event, so it's going to be really nice to get to play those in co-op. And they're adding a new mode called Coliseum. So hopefully the story is also exciting. For playing the event, you are going to be able to unlock and befriend a free Sharena character, who is probably my favorite of the Asker trio, although it's hard to beat Anna just because of her legacy with the whole series of Fire Emblem. But Sharena's personality, I think, is just very fun. She's a really lighthearted character compared to Alphonse, and I would have preferred to have her last year, but I'm happy to get her this year as well. So the event itself should be pretty fun, we'll see. But we're mainly going to focus on the Summon Showcase preview. And this is your last day if you wanted to go for Gala Mars. Now you can probably make a little bit more informed decision because you've at least seen Chrom and you've seen Peony, even if you haven't seen what Young Tiki does yet. She is a water dagger pretty clearly, so we do know at least that much. But that's all we really know for her right now. So as for this showcase, it's limited time, but we know at least there's a possibility, because last year's collaboration came back a year later. I guess there is a possibility that these characters could come back, but you're probably looking at quite a while before that would actually happen. And this is going to last more than a week, almost 2 weeks, from April 30th to May 12th, so you have some time to summon on this. Hopefully there will be a good amount of Formite with the new event and summoning tickets as well, to give you kind of a stock if you already were summoning on the other Fire Emblem banner that had Marth, Fjorm, and Veronica, or even Gala Dragalia to get Gala Mars. But let's start off today with Chrom. Chrom is kind of a surprise to me. I didn't think they would necessarily draw upon Chrom of all the characters in Fire Emblem Awakening, but it does make sense. I mean, he is the protagonist. I just thought Lucina's popularity might lead her to get chosen over Chrom, even if they went with an Awakening rep, or maybe they would have gone with, say, Robin. But I appreciate Chrom being in here, and I'm not a huge Chrom fan, but actually I kind of convinced myself that I am at least a fan. The more I thought about Chrom as a character, I realized that he's kind of a flawed character. Like, he tries hard, he means well, he's kind of goofy, but I feel like he's not always successful, and he's like just trying to be a good dad to Lucina. So I kind of like Chrom. I think he actually has a lot of wrinkles to his character that make him fun. He reminds me a lot of Curran in Dragalia Lost, and the relationship between Curran and Lathna, and kind of Curran being like a well-meaning jokester, funny at his own expense. So I do think Chrom has elements of that kind of give him a lot of texture as a character. So I'm happy to see him, and if you can see in the background, Lissa's there, and on the other side, you can't really make it out in this picture, but it's actually Frederick. So Frederick, obviously, great character. You know, pick a god and pray, one of the best critical hit lines in the series, in my opinion. But we have Chrom, we don't have Frederick, we don't have Lissa. They're just there for moral support. And it's cool that they make an appearance in the artwork. Maybe they'll show up in the story. So Chrom has a description that he's the prince of the Halidom of Elise and a leader of a militia called the Shepherds. While he himself worries that he comes across as cold, he's idolized as a good man without pretense and one who fights at the forefront for the sake of peace. I guess Chrom being in charge of a Halidom also makes him an appropriate character to bring into the world of Dragalia, because so is Yuden. So he is another fire sword, and I know what you're thinking, we have so many fire swords in the game. I look at this as more of an advantage than a disadvantage, because if you've built one of the characters, hey, it's easy to transfer their weapon over to Chrom if you decide you enjoy Chrom and want to utilize him. And as we'll see, Chrom actually has a unique co-ability, so it's not like he overlaps with another fire sword on your team, even if they play very similarly. So let's get into Chrom's kit. His skills are Exalted Sword and Aether. Exalted Sword deals flame damage to enemies directly ahead and grants the user 1 stack of Flames of Awakening. Flames of Awakening can stack up to 3 times, and each stack will progressively increase the strength of Aether. Using Aether will consume all stacks of Flames of Awakening. So basically, this is a way of powering up Aether. Hopefully it has a decent amount of damage, but I think Aether is going to be where most of Chrom's damage output comes from. And I just want to say, first off, I'm really excited that they included Aether. Last year we got Alphonse and he had Soul. It looks like this year Sharena is going to have Luna. And now we have Chrom, and Chrom finally brings Aether into the game. So this deals flame damage to the target and nearby enemies and restores 3% of the damage inflicted as HP to the user. This recovery caps at 15% of their max HP. Afflicted foes take extra damage. Pretty cool. I like that it's open-ended here. It means that you could use Chrom off-element potentially. And now that Golemars exists, if you have Golemars on Chrom, Flame is a legit contender for taking their characters off-element, in my opinion. Shadow is obviously dominant in that regard because you can take Shadow to any content, and Flame, you're not going to be doing a lot of damage with your Flame characters against water bosses. But still, potentially, I think there's some possibilities for Chrom here, and we'll get that even more when we look at the co-ability and abilities. But Aether, pretty sweet. I like that it's open-ended, afflicted foes, not just burning foes. This skill strength will increase relative to the number of Flames of Awakening stacks the user has, and will consume all Flames of Awakening stacks and 1 level of the user's skill reservoir on use. So, skill reservoir, I hate to see it. I hate to see it because I already know what's going to happen here. Skill reservoir, sadly, is a mechanic that is not well explained. It's not on the character's description anywhere. But basically, in the top left corner of the screen, or top right, depending on your layout, you're going to have a gauge that can fill up with up to 3 stacks in the skill reservoir, and it charges up when you're doing your basic attacks. For Gala Alex, who's the first character who had this, it also wasn't really explained in her kit itself, but in a separate kind of info dump about her. And in her case, it actually changed her basic attack animations, I believe. It doesn't look like that's the case for Chrom, but that's basically how the skill reservoir works, is it's kind of like a separate axis of grinding up skills than the normal SP cost that you're used to on your skills. Having said all of that, I have heard, from people who have watched the trailer and analyzed the numbers compared to other trailers, that Aether, when it's fully charged, appears to have a very insane damage modifier, to the point that this could quite possibly be like the highest damage modifier in the game on a single skill. If that is the case, I love it, because I think it's a pretty steep cost to charge 3 stacks. Usually your first skill does ramp up quickly, so it's not like Exalted Sword. I don't think it'll be especially slow to use, so you might be able to ramp up 3 stacks anyway. But I think that despite being yet another Fire Sword, I think Chrom has good potential here to feel unique and feel fun to play. So I'm hyped about that. Co-ability is what I was alluding to earlier that also makes Chrom a very interesting pickup. HP plus 10% and defense plus 10%. Now, one thing we have to see is whether this clashes with existing HP and defense co-abilities, like whether you just get the highest of the two, or if this actually adds or multiplies with those. If it's the latter and it adds or multiplies, this is insane. This is a huge other dimension of defensive capabilities for your characters when you're doing co-op. When you're in co-op, the 3 backliners on your team are going to provide their co-ability and chain co-ability to your main character. And granted, nowadays, not a lot of content requires you to have a lot of extra HP and defense, but I still think that this is such a huge amount and it's unique that there's probably some special things you can do here. As somebody who likes building teams, especially as of the co-ability and chain co-ability change, and likes doing soloing more recently, this gets me excited. This gets my brain thinking about, how can I use Chrom to do something that's actually pretty fun? Chain co-ability, a little bit less exciting. Burn equals user win res plus 8%. From what I see here, nothing causes burn on either of these. He just does extra damage on Aether if the enemy is already afflicted. So this doesn't seem to work on Chrom by himself, but it's a way that he could work with other characters to perform well. Chrom's abilities are full HP equals strength plus 15%. Normally I would say that's a hard condition to meet, but honestly nowadays it's not as hard as it used to be with healers like Grace, who can prevent damage rather than curing damage, and just healing in general being very respectable. Even if you want to stick within the flame element, Halloween Lowen, very solid healer. He has that regen. Regen is really good in combination with full HP abilities because even if you take chip damage later, if you still have regen ticks, you can recover from it. And then, of course, the fact that Chrom has Aether, which heals him. And I didn't talk about the heal earlier, but that could also make him a pretty good unit for solo or auto play, I think, just looking at this. Like, this type of co-ability could possibly be good in auto play because it makes you so much more defensive, and then the fact that he can restore himself. This might not work that often, but I could see him working with Grace and maybe doing some kind of expert Volk auto or solo play. Sleep res of 100% is fine. I think this might be a reference to Robin when you first wake up in the game. It's probably a bit of a stretch. I mean, flame characters in Dragalia just have either stun res or sleep res typically, so they probably just picked one of the two. And then Rightful King, if Aether is used when the user has 3 stacks of Flames of Awakening and their skill reservoir is at level 3, a variant called Awakening Aether will be used instead. Using Awakening Aether will consume all 3 stacks of Flames of Awakening and empty the user's skill reservoir. So, notably for this, you need both 3 stacks of Flames of Awakening and your skill reservoir needs to be at level 3. Earlier, when we read this, it doesn't really say, let's see. This consumes all Flames of Awakening stacks anyway and 1 level of the skill reservoir on use. But if your skill reservoir is, let's read this again. If your skill reservoir is at 3, so let's say you have 3 stacks of Flames of Awakening and your reservoir is at 2. After you use this skill, you're going to have 0 stacks of Awakening and your reservoir is going to be down to 1. But if you go all the way up to 3, you're going to be reset to 0 in both, but you're going to get the Awakening Aether variant, which I have to assume maybe that's the one that has insane damage. That would kind of make sense. And that could potentially lead to a playstyle where Chrom really wants to ramp up. Hopefully it kind of just works out. I think the nicest way for this character to play out would be if you just are proactively using Exalted Sword, and roughly in the time it takes you to cast it 3 times, that's about how long it takes to fill your skill reservoir 3 times as well. So then by the time you're using Aether, it just sort of happens organically. But we don't actually have to just purely ponder that, because over on Twitter, a gameplay trailer was posted. So I will go ahead and edit that into the video now. And this is my first time actually seeing it. I'm going to see it along with y'all. So I'll give you my impressions as we go. All right, so love the splash art. Prince of Elise, Flame Sword Attack Unit Chrom. And you can see Freddy in the background. So get the most out of the Aether skill. The Exalted Sword skill deals damage to enemies and applies the Flames of Awakening buff to the user. Looks like a pretty cool lunge forward, and Aether seems ready right away. When the Aether skill activates, it consumes a Flames of Awakening buff and a skill reservoir charge. Interesting. That's something we already know. You can accrue up to 3 Flames of Awakening buffs, and the Aether skill changes based on that number. Alright, so it looked a little bit more substantial there. And now, this is Awakening Aether. You must have learned the rightful king ability, so that's the one that actually interacts. Hopefully they show it one more time. Yeah, you can see that sweet jump slash and explosion. Love to see it. Oh, they're even giving us a side-by-side. They're doing a good job with these gameplay trailers. I'm glad they actually listened to the community about this, because in the past, they just did like artwork and flavor trailers that didn't really tell you much about the characters you might be going for. So that's it. That's Chrom's trailer, and we're going to look at a similar one later on for Peony, who we're going to discuss now. So, Peony is not a character I know well at all. I really stopped playing Fire Emblem Heroes a lot when Dragalia came out, and my interest kind of dwindled. I did play through Air's book a little bit more, and I did enjoy playing through Air's book, and just in general, like, I think I got so much value out of that game. I played that for so many years, so I feel very satisfied, and I've heard good things. Like, I've heard they've been improving the summoning situation with how they've changed it so that you always get a certain character after a certain amount of summons. Like, I think that the game is still doing very well, obviously. So maybe there will be some newer Fae fans, or just Fae fans in general, who see Peony and are like, that's my girl, that's the one that I really want to get. And after looking at this character's kit, I have to say, like, this is probably something worth summoning for, and it might be better than Chrom here. You're not going to have a lot of control over which of the two that you end up getting, of course, but this is actually enticing me to summon, and I am a huge Young Tiki fan, so I have definitely planned to wait and save my resources for Young Tiki's banner. I have a plus 10 Young Tiki in Fire Emblem Heroes. I think she's just so wholesome. She's just so adorable as a dragon. Like, I feel she's actually the one 3,000-year-old dragon that's actually like an innocent child, and I appreciate that about her. So I love her relationship with Marth. It's very sweet. So I'm excited to try get her. But Peony here, you know, maybe if we get lucky on Tiki, we can come back and have a chance. So let's read about her, since I really don't know. And right away, I'm seeing that we're probably not going to be able to read this very well. So let's start from the Realm of Dreams. So she's from the Realm of Dreams. Brave, forward-looking, and kind, she has the power to grant happy dreams and loves nothing more than using it frequently. She's also fond of playing with human children. One thing to note is, with her being a fairy, I am excited if I get to summon her. I want to see that story, because it seems like she's going to have really fun interactions with Not, who's also a fairy, and Not is like my favorite Dragalia character, so I'm looking forward to that if I manage to get her. Her skills, I guess first I should say, she is a wand, a light wand. It's been a while since we got a wands character, and a light wand, I want to say it's possible. Well, we got Chitose, so we had him earlier for New Year's, but before that it might have been like Lucretia. Yet, having said that, there's a good amount of light wands. I guess there's Xiaolei, who did come out after Lucretia, and in the original game there was already a Mane, so we have a good amount of them. But Peony, I think, will set herself apart, and right now light wands don't see a lot of use. Light characters in general don't get a lot of use because not many people are playing High Zodiarc's Trial. And there's actually a pretty big disparity, despite Light and Shadow functioning kind of similarly in Dragalia, in that in the hands of the player they have no weaknesses. Light characters' DPS is just generally lower, like the characters aren't built out to be as strong and as busted as Shadow characters. There's perhaps different reasons for that. Maybe there's some intentional balancing of the HP levels of bosses around that element, and so that could be one reason. Another thing that people speculate is, Gala Cleo came out last year in Shadow, and she was so pushed that in order to give people more options, they decided, let's just make all Shadow characters in a similar level so people at least have diversity in their lobbies. But for Peony, I'm excited. I just like Light characters. Light's probably my strongest element from a resources standpoint. I have all of the Light High Dragon weapons at tier 2, and recently maxed out my Light Fafnir and everything. So I've played a lot of High Jupiter's Trial because of how strong Shadow was, and that's led me to do pretty well in Light and get a lot of limited characters. That being said, Light is kind of cursed and notorious that a lot of the best characters are limited. So that could be another reason why maybe you want to go for Peony, because in the permanent pool, there's not that many of the highest power Light characters around. Like, some of the stronger ones are Mitsuhide, who was New Year's limited. We also had Gala Luca and Gala Yuden, who are obviously limited to Galas. We had in the past, Chitose is a strong character, also limited to New Year's. We had Dragalia Malara limited to Christmas time. We had Monster Hunter Vanessa limited to the Monster Hunter event. And going back even further, we had Halloween Elisan, not considered one of the strongest characters anymore, but she does have a solid chain co-ability. And she was limited to the Halloween event. So now we have Peony, who's limited to Fire Emblem, and we have Alphonse, who's at least welfare, but limited. Sharena is going to be Light Element. She's limited. So yeah, there's reasons why you might want to get Peony before hard dark content or hard shadow content comes out. Let's actually finally get into her kit with all that musing aside. So Flower of Joy deals light damage to the target, inflicts paralysis, inflicts skill shift if the attack connects. Phase 2 adds an additional 10% increase to the user's defense for 10 seconds, while Phase 3 adds an additional 10% increase to the entire team's strength for 10 seconds. So, I'm wondering here, with some of these skill shift moves, you can intentionally miss the target in order to maintain the last phase of the shift. Like, on rare occasion, this matters for Marth when you want to ramp attack rate repeatedly, or at least people used to try it. I can't imagine it's like the best thing to do. But that is one corner case with skill shift, but it depends on how the skill shift is worded. Since this one demands that the attack actually connect, you can stay on phase 3 if you want to, but probably, I don't know, only a 10% strength increase for 10 seconds. You probably just want to hit with the skill and reset the skill shift. Gentle Dream deals light damage to enemies in a line and increases the entire team's strength by 10%. Alright, another strength buff. An attack rate, love to see it, by 10% for 10 seconds. Paralyzed foes take extra damage. So notably no way to paralyze on either of these skills, but that could make her play nicely with others. And then we get to the main reason why Peony is gotta be a staple here. Look at her co-ability. Light damage plus 20%. I just said, light is not as busted of an element as shadow, but if you're using any light character in co-op, this is de facto going to be one of the best co-abilities to run in your backline, period. Maybe if you have an insane skill damage ratio, although even then, I'm trying to think, the co-ability on wands doesn't go up to 25%, I think it's less than that, so I think this is just outright the best co-ability for any light character going forward, except maybe a healer. You could argue if you need a lot of healing and you don't care at all about damage, then maybe you don't want this. But like any character that cares about damage in the slightest, probably going to be pretty good with this type of co-ability. Now, granted, you know, there are a lot of different reasons why you run backlines. Like, I still keep Yuden in all of my backlines for player EXP. So typically that occupies one slot. If you're running a buffer, then you probably want to use Tobias. That's going to occupy another slot. So when you only have one slot left as, say, a buffer, maybe you have a choice there of, like, maybe skill haste is actually better for you. It's better to run, say, a bow than just doing 20% straight up damage if you're like Chitose or something. But in general, like any light DPS, this is insane. This co-ability is just strictly better than, say, the Blade co-ability of Strength. And that's before we even get into her Chain co-ability, which just gives you light defense, which is fine. It's not like super powerful, but like that defense is not irrelevant. I would say that's kind of like a neutral. And especially if your character is a ranged character, your leader, that might actually save you in some instances. So I like it. You know, it's not affliction dependent, not HP dependent. It's just a straight up defense plus 6%. This, of course, being a chain co-ability, can stack, which is pretty cool. And I wonder, I think Chitose has defense also. Let's check really quick because I want to get that train of thought out of my brain and figure out if that's actually the case. So let's look at him. He's here. Yeah, defense. So, and okay, so this is only 15%. So this will never really give you more damage than just straight up 20% damage. But the great thing is with Chitose being a different co-ability, you could run them together, run him and Peony together. So that's pretty sweet. All right, let's look at the actual abilities now. This first one is going to be long, so let's start with Curse Res 100%, solid, and Paralyzed Punisher 30%. Also solid, but notably you're going to need another enabler unless this long ability does something that we're not expecting. So first up, Aid of the Lejosulfar 2. That's my best attempt, y'all. I'm sorry. Grants the entire team a life shield at the start of quests. Using Gentle Dream grants the user the Empowering Dreams effect. When the effect is active, the user's next Force Strike will fill 40% of skill gauges for each team member's initial skill, with the exception of Peony. So let's stop there so we can parse this. First of all, there's going to be a life shield that everybody gets at the beginning of quests. It's not clear based on what we've read so far what the size of the life shield is, but life shield is what Grace has. It's what makes her exceptional as a healer and a defensive unit. So life shield is powerful, but the fact that it's at the start of quest and you can't refresh it, from what we've read so far, could be a limitation. Using Gentle Dream grants her the Empowering Dreams effect. So Gentle Dream is her second skill, so you're going to get Empowering Dreams when you activate your second skill. When this is active, the user's next Force Strike will fill 40% of skill gauges on each team member's initial skill, with the exception of Peony. So immediately your Force Strike is going to fill everybody's skill gauges, which is kind of insane. 40% is a lot. It could very easily give everybody their initial skill active right away, which is crazy when you think about that happens every time she casts Gentle Dream. That's a lot of skill recharge, but maybe there's some nuance here. Like, you might worry that your teammates don't have or already have their skill fully charged and you could waste this. This is going to be something that's possibly hard to communicate in a co-op setting. Depending on the content you're facing, in some content, there are times when you very clearly have unloaded all your skills. Like, a little bit into break might be a good time to use the Force Strike, perhaps. But that might be a little bit hard to suss out. It might just be best to use it on cooldown and hope for the benefit to work. So then the second part of this is that Force Strike also grants the following effects to all team members for 10 seconds, none of which will stack. Increases strength by 10%. Increases attack rate by 10%. Increases defense by 20%. Adds 5% to shadow resistance. Increases movement speed by 5%. I don't even know what we're reading here anymore. Wow, what? The following effects, plural, for 10 seconds. None of them stack. So what I'm getting now is that this Force Strike is not an attack type Force Strike. It's more of a buff zone Force Strike. That's kind of what it seems like. And maybe you can't stack the buff zone with itself or with other peonies. Strength 10%, attack rate 10%, defense 20%, 5% shadow res, 5% movement speed. We're in movement speed territory now. You can go 2 times speed and get 5% movement speed. Okay. The Empowering Dreams effect cannot stack, will be consumed on use, and will not activate again for 20 seconds after activating. That may or may not matter depending on how slowly Gentle Dream charges. This seems like Galacleo. I could be reading this wrong, but it seems kind of like Galacleo, like you're just getting an absurd buff zone all the time, doing all of the things. The only thing that you don't really get here is any type of healing. So that could be a potential limitation for Peony, but she seems like an insane team buffer. I mean, just her co-ability is absurd to me. Like, I can't believe this co-ability exists. So we're going to see if we're able to pull her, but first, let's go ahead and check out her actual trailer that posted over on Twitter. Maybe we'll get some confirmation on how she plays, if it is like Galacleo, like it seems. We're going to go ahead and start that now, and like before, I will give you my real-time impressions. Alright, so Sweet Dream, Peony, Light, Wand, Support Unit. Her artwork is great, by the way. Use buffs to support your team. The Gentle Dream skill damages enemies and boosts your team's strength and attack rate. It also applies the Empowering Dreams buff, which alters Peony's Force Strikes if you learned the ability. Okay, let's see the Empowering Dreams buff. Oh, whoa, weird. The Force Strike animation was weird. It didn't look like it made a zone. It looks like it's everywhere on the map. Okay. It's just kind of like she's waving a magic wand with the way the Force Strike charts up. Yeah, now they're comparing the two Force Strikes. It did deal damage. It's kind of like she readied her wand and then it spawned like a light pillar on the enemy. But obviously, more importantly, it's just the amount of buffs. I mean, my god, look at those buffs all spawn on the bottom of the screen. Yo. There's so much temptation here. The temptation is super real. Well, I definitely want to summon on this banner. I don't know about y'all. I am a sucker for these limited characters, Fire Emblem characters. I love building teams. I think the co-abilities on these are going to be very interesting. So I'm looking forward to this and looking forward to the event in general. Brand new story. That should be fun to play through tomorrow. Let me know what you think about the banner in the comments below. And as one final thing, to hopefully instill some patience and get you to wait for Tiki like I'm trying to wait for her, I do want to play, last up for this video, the trailer they posted for Sharena. Because if nothing else, you're at least going to get your free Sharena. Lovely person, lovely character, and let's take a look and see what she's like to close things out. I think that'll be fun, and let's look at it. I'll give my real-time reaction to it right now. Alright, so 2 skills. Looking good. Light element, of course, with Jupiter there, like her little portrait in the corner. This one is not as much like a gameplay tutorial, but her first skill is Resplendent Slash. Notice it paralyzed the enemy and she got 13% strength. And then Luna naturally causes a defensive debuff. Okay, interesting. They're showing off something. When she charges her Force Strike and gets hit, it looks like she gains a strength buff. So it seems like she's very similar to Monster Hunter Vanessa right now, but maybe she's like a welfare variant. But yeah, pretty cool. I'm looking forward to playing as her. I have the weapon for her and everything. Probably the type of character I might consider 50 noting, actually, because I do like Sharena. And one great thing, even though these characters are welfare characters, So far, I believe their chain co-abilities have provided the full amount that 5 stars normally provide. If I'm right here, when she got that 13% strength off of paralysis, that was probably because her chain co-ability is strength plus 13% when the user paralyzes an enemy. So that is one thing that I'm looking forward to. That'll tide me over. I'll definitely play as her for the new event. And I'm just happy this has finally come. Hopefully people get to play co-op and enjoy it. I've still been having a good time in Dragalia Lost, but I do see a lot more people a little bummed out recently about Alberian Front and just in general not getting that hard content fix that they're looking for. It's kind of funny. I kind of feel like at some points I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum where I just have enjoyed how chill the game is recently and low stress because I don't feel like I necessarily need any of the endgame gear to do the content. So I have liked that aspect, but at times, when you feel like you want to rush things down or you feel frustrated because you're not able to get your clears, I suggest, take a break, relax, take a deep breath. That has definitely helped me. I was doing some Cielo's Wrath earlier on co-op for the first time. It's tough. I mean, it's not easy. It surprised me because my solo felt really solid, but y'all out there doing co-op, y'all are something else because it is pretty tough. And I decided to go ahead and take a break and make this video. So had a lot of fun today talking about the new units, all the build possibilities that I'm looking forward to testing out. I hope that you enjoyed this video too, and like I said, let me know what you think about the new characters. Are you going to pull, going to wait? Let me know what you think about the event. I'll wait to read your comments until I've actually played through the story. And expect an upload on Kindred Ties very, very soon. That is actually going to do it this time. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.